1, 2. 1, 2. Welcome everybody for today's town hall. It's nice to see so many faces. I'm happy you're here. So welcome to those who are also watching on our channel for Heritage Village, that they can also see what's going on. At first on the agenda is we're going to have Lori come up and welcome any new residents.
Good afternoon, and once again, it's my honor and privilege to introduce the new residents that have moved into both Heritage Village as well as Moravian Hall Square since our last meeting in May. So I'm going to start with Heritage Village. We had John Carica. Is John here? John, oh, there you are. Hi, John. If you can just stand and wave to the audience. John moved into at Home 420 on Independence Way. He moved here from the Bangor area. From Moravian Hall Square, we have Tom and Bonnie Zatritis. They're in the back corner there. Tom and Bonnie, if you could just stand if you don't mind. They moved into their home, apartment 330, on June 29th. They moved here from the Allentown area. Next, we have Carmel Karsh. Carmel moved into her home, apartment 221, and she moved in on June 30th, and she moved here all the way from Nazareth. Now, technically Lower Nazareth. I don't know if we need to make that distinction, but, and then next, Cherie Nunemaker. Cherie, I know she's up there, back, okay. She moved into her new home, apartment 311, on July the 1st, and she moved here from the Easton area. Dan and Judy Bauer, they're right over here. They moved into their new home, apartment 207, on July 2nd, and they moved here from the Stockertown area, all the way from Stockertown. And then Ella Jane Kunkel, I know she's not here, she wasn't able to join us today. She moved into her new home, apartment 335, on July 9th, and she moved here from the Bethlehem area. So we hope you'll make an effort to get to know these new residents, say hello, and make them feel welcomed. So thank you. And we'll turn it over to Gareth. Walking down the aisle. Yeah, that was a long way.
Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you all, as usual. I'd already mentioned to a resident that my remarks today would be fairly brief, and she said that would be a first. So, but seriously, I know people are always interested in what's happening in our culinary services department. We've had a good year. Of course, it's not over yet. Quite busy. One of the main things that happened this year, of course, is that Jen Waldmiller moved on to a new position as director at Kirkland Village, and that was back at the end of May, and we spent the next 3 months looking for her replacement, which was quite a process. We had, I think, about 65 applicants for the position. I think within a couple of weeks we were able to screen out about 55 of them. So there were a lot of out-of-work realtors and insurance agents and car mechanics in that mix, which obviously didn't meet the criteria for the position. But it was a pretty exhaustive process. Eventually we came down to 2 candidates, and we selected Dana Daig as my assistant. And I will like to introduce Dana in a couple of minutes. But just to talk a little bit about what we've been doing this year, apart from replacing that key position in our management team, one of the new things that happened this year was a meal plan for residents at Heritage Village. And I'm happy to report that we now have 74 residents signed up for that. So, and of course there's 2 opportunities each year to sign up for that, which is January 1st and July 1st. So we just went through the second sign-up period. I think we had a couple of people drop off for various reasons. I think one of them at least was just weren't using all the funds which were available for the monthly spend down. But we added several people to that, and now we're up to about 74 people. And of course, that plan was mainly still a voluntary plan for those residents who had come on board at Heritage Village prior to the end of last year, and a mandatory plan for new residents who'd signed on after January 1st of this year. So a kind of a combination of the two. But in reality, that's much more skewed towards residents who didn't have to sign up for the plan, but who thought it had good value, and therefore they ended up signing up for it, and it's been going well. Obviously, that plan allows them not just to have meals at the Cooper Centre, which is on site for Heritage Village, but also here, either in the cafe or in the Rose Inn, and even in the health centre areas if they have partners or other loved ones in there that they would like to dine with in any of the other areas, the health and wellness centre areas, or the health and wellness centre dining rooms. So we're excited that the plan has some momentum. We've started to track it from the business point of view. It's doing well. We're not necessarily making any money, but we are definitely breaking even, and we look forward to the part where we have enough critical mass so that we can really start to offer more and more programming actually at Heritage Village. We recently started, as of July 7th, with a Tuesday and Wednesday program where we were offering breakfast and lunch from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. for breakfast, and then 11 to 2 for lunch. And that has gone very well also. And we continue to have residents amongst themselves at Heritage Village organizing events which are well attended. Tonight we have an event which is a beach themed event, which now has 60 people signed up. So as I said, we're getting good attendance, particularly for special events. And again, residents are able to use their dollars for that also. So just some background as to what we're doing this year. So Dana's actually coming here at a time when we're really trying to start to develop that program. And also, the other areas that we serve, obviously, the Rose Inn Room, our numbers have now gone up by about 10% in terms of numbers or average numbers of residents attending every night. So we're pleased to see that. And of course, a lot of it is residents coming over from Heritage Village to use either the Rose Inn Room or the cafe. So our trends are definitely on the up and up, so we're excited about that. And of course, we look forward next year to being able to build on some of those successes. But just a little brief background about Dana. He's at the back there. I think he's kind of surveying the scene. I told him there's going to be 100 people here. He's like, no problem. But Dana Daig. Actually, if Matt Matajik were here, we could make fun of Matt because Dana actually knows Matt longer than probably anybody in this room. He actually trained Matt as a cook back in the day. So I worked with Dana back in the very early 2000s. He was my sous chef. Since then, he's gone on to a pretty impressive career as a director, particularly with the Holy Family Manor Group in Bethlehem. That was his last position. He also worked at Old Orchard. And he worked for my old company, Sodexo, which was, of course, I'm sure many of you remember, was originally the Wood Company, which is a homegrown Allentown company. Scotty Wood, who's now gone, of course, and Bob, they started off in a luncheonette down in the middle of Allentown on Chew Street, I think. And they were able to build their business up through Muhlenberg College and then take on contracts with many other colleges in the area, Lafayette, Lehigh, and also the hospital system, Lehigh Valley Hospital System. They ran that for 25 years. And eventually Wood was bought by Sodexo, and of course Sodexo and Wood were always here, almost from day one as contractors. So when we took over from Cullen S, when we took over as Cullen S 3.5 years ago, several people already at Cullen S had worked for Wood, including me. So there's one thing that is sort of reassuring to me and our team in all that process is that there was a continuum, and Bob Wood always used to talk about golden threads, and what he meant by that was that these cultural differences, these special things, these signature things that we do, kind of thread their way across the years with the various people who've always been connected to what the original culture was at Wood, which is it's a home-based company. And that, I'm not from around these parts, even though I've lived here for 48 years. But I always thought wood reminded me of some of the companies I'd been dealing with back home. Kind of an old school, very value focused, very customer, very resident focused. So that was always very reassuring to me, even when I joined Cullen/S 3.5 years ago. And the principal of Cullen/S is an old wood guy. So, you know, there's a lot of connectivity, particularly between our various food service contractors and also the various communities throughout the Lehigh Valley, of which obviously Moravian Hall Square and Morning Star Living is part of and has been for many years. So Dana was here, 20 odd years ago. So he's another person who's very familiar with that kind of old school culture of value, connecting with residents, empathy, bringing part of yourself into the position, not just, you know, filling in the numbers every day. So Dana is a local guy, Nazareth guy. Dana, would you like to say a couple of words to our group? I can bring you the microphone.
Bear with me. I'm not used to using one of these. So as Gareth said, I was here. I left around 25 years ago. I was the sous chef. I actually opened the Rosen dining room. So many areas of service here have been updated. The place is totally different than when I left. It looks beautiful. The culture here is great. I am so thankful for the opportunity from Sue and Gareth to be here. And I look forward to making every day here better for all of you. So thank you. And everyone here has been welcoming to me, and I really appreciate it. On a lighter note, though, of the 65 applicants that they had, I lived the closest. So that's why I got the job. But thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Welcome. At this time, I'd like to introduce Susan Ellis from the Moravian Historical Society. Her office is in the Whitfield House. That's a little joke. She's actually going to speak to us today about the history of Nazareth. She has served as the executive director of Moravian Historical Society since August of 2018. Prior to that, she developed high-impact community programs for diverse audiences at Lafayette College, Lehigh University, and also as the first director of the Banana Factory, a new community arts center. She is the author of the book Nazareth, published in 2021 under the Arcadia Press Images of America series. And Susan has lived in Nazareth for more than 40 years with her husband, Dick Boak, and Susan is a practicing artist herself. And when she is not at Moravian Historical Society, she can be found at the Pottery Studio. So welcome, Susan.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I hope you can hear me. No? How about now? No? Now? Is that better? How about in the back? Yes? Great. Okay. Well, thank you again, Kelly, for that nice introduction. It's wonderful to see you all. I recognize some familiar faces. Kelly mentioned that I was hired in 2018. At the time I was hired, the president of the board of the Moravian Historical Society was Steve Krawick, in the audience today. So he's responsible for me being here, I would say. And I see some other familiar faces, some members of the organization. Thank you for your membership. It's really wonderful to have that support. And I recognize some of you from the museum and from some of our other events. So again, great to see you all. Let's see if I can get this going here. Oh, wrong way. Nope. There we are. So, as Kelly mentioned, I was somebody called and asked if I could give a history of Nazareth in 15 minutes. I laughed. What's that? Oh, my slide went off, huh? Thank you, Sue. There we go. Anyway, a history, 300 years in 15 minutes. Buckle up because we're going to go kind of fast, right? I'll do my best, and hopefully we'll have a time for some questions if you have them. But today we know Nazareth as a sprawling community surrounded by suburbs. However, you can still trace Nazareth's 18th century beginnings. Much of the borough of Nazareth is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, with more than 500 structures built between 1740 and 1938. So I'm going to start today with a little early history, and then I'll tell you about some of the milestones in Nazareth, some significant contributions and highlights from our town. But first, it's important to know that this land that we are on today was home to the Lenape people, commonly referred to today as the Delaware Nation. Prior to European arrival, this area was known as Lenapehoking, the homeland of the Lenape people for millennia. So Lenapehoking, as you can see from this map, includes parts of New York, all of New Jersey, the eastern part of Pennsylvania, and the tip of Delaware. Today, because of settler colonialism, the majority of Lenape citizens live in Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and Ontario, where they reside as federally recognized sovereign nations. In 1683, William Penn purchased land from the Lenape, and then in 1737, his sons tricked the Lenape out of roughly 1 million acres by claiming that the Lenape had promised as much land as could be walked in a day and a half. They then hired experienced runners to travel as far as they could on paths that they had cleared ahead of time. So I'm sure, hopefully, a lot of you know this as the fraudulent act known as the walking purchase. So shortly after that, the Moravians arrived to this area. The Moravians are the ones who founded Nazareth, so I'll just give a quick mention here. The Moravians are an early Protestant religious group from Europe. In 1727, so that's coming up on 300 years ago, brought about a renewal of the Moravian faith, which led to what is now the modern-day Moravian Church. The Moravians then started missionary work all across the globe, and it was this missionary work that brought them to this area. So, in May of 1740, the Moravians arrived in Nazareth at the invitation of an English Anglican minister by the name of George Whitefield. They began work on the stone house. They soon had some disagreements between Whitefield and the Moravians, which forced the Moravians to find a new home. They had to abandon this project for a short time. They purchased 500 acres just south of Nazareth, along the Monocacy Creek, and that's what became Bethlehem, right? So right around that same time, they negotiated with Whitefield, who had run into some financial issues, to purchase the entire 5,000-acre Nazareth tract. So they soon returned, and they completed the Whitefield house in 1743. So back to May of 1740, imagine they arrived and there was nothing here. This was a wilderness, right? So after sleeping those first few nights under a large oak tree, the Moravians built a wooden house that they called the first house, pictured here. The first house, unfortunately, was demolished in 1864, but a marker stands there today on our historic site. It was a rainy summer, and it prevented the completion of the stone house before winter, so the Moravians built a second log structure on the property, known as the Gray Cottage. They put this up in the fall of 1740. So it stands today as the oldest surviving Moravian structure in North America. Pretty special building. If any of you have driven by recently, you know that we're doing a major restoration project on it. If you haven't driven by, I welcome you to come visit. It's pretty fascinating to watch them. They're replacing some of the lower logs on the structure. So let's see here. So I'll just quickly mention here, over its lifetime, the Gray Cottage was home to the first school, the first boys' school in Nazareth for Moravian boys. That started in 1743. It was housing for retired missionaries. It was a private dwelling. Today, we use it for exhibitions, educational programs, workshops, children's summer camps, guided tours, and community events. And there's the Whitfield House, which was, as I mentioned, completed in 1743. It has served in many ways throughout its lifespan. First as a communal residence, the first place of worship in Nazareth for the Moravians. The Moravian School for Girls was there for a short time. It served as the children's nursery, a haven for refugees during the French and Indian War, and then finally as apartments, and an early home of the Moravian Theological Seminary. So today, the Whitfield House serves as the headquarters and museum of the Moravian Historical Society. Now you may notice that it looks a little bit smaller in this photo, right? So this is prior to the expansion, which happened around the 1900. They added about a third additional space. So in its early years, only people of Moravian faith could live and work in Nazareth. The Moravians lived in a shared communal structure called the general economy. It was in this general economy where everybody worked for the common good without receiving pay. In exchange, they were basically cared for from cradle to grave, right? So they had a place to live, they had food, they had clothing, they had education, they had health care. Again, all of their needs were met. So this system enabled the Moravians to send out people as preachers and missionaries while others worked the lands, produced the goods, taught the children. Again, everybody was working together for the common good. Bethlehem was the center of Moravian activity in colonial America, but the two communities of Bethlehem and Nazareth really were closely linked, and in fact, they operated as one community during those early years. So in addition to the general economy, the Moravians lived quite differently back then than you and I live today. They lived in what they called choir houses. So they were not singing groups, but these were living groups where they lived according to age, gender, and marital status. So the choir system meant that instead of living with their family members, the Moravians lived with their choir groups. So for instance, single men and older boys lived together in the single brethren's house. Single women and older girls lived together in the single sister's house. There was a widow's house and a widower's house. And of course, I already mentioned the children were cared for in the nursery where other members of the community took care of them. So imagine this community kind of replaced that family unit that we're used to. This is the Nazareth Single Brothers House, where the unmarried men lived and practiced their trades. It was built in 1773 on Main Street in Nazareth, so the next time you're headed down Main Street, you won't recognize it because right now it's a flower shop. It's been kind of covered over, but you can kind of still see little hints of it. So this stone building had sleeping quarters, workrooms, as well as their zal or chapel. And this is the Single Sisters House in Nazareth. Does anybody recognize this building? It's quite close to where we are right now. So the Single Sisters House was built right next to the Manor House, which I will talk about in a minute. So the choir system began to change toward the end of the 18th century, but the Single Sisters House and the Widow's House in Bethlehem were really still lived in right up until the 20th century. So really long time that this living system took place. Now I just heard mention of the Rose Inn. It's your restaurant or dining hall here. Actually, the Rose Inn was an actual inn originally. That's where the name came from. So this is the Rose Inn pictured here. It opened in 1752 as a guest house for travelers who were either visiting the town or passing through. The completed building contained 7 rooms, a kitchen, and a cellar. And then in 1755, during the French and Indian War, Settlers from the north fled and were sheltered here. There were palisades that were built up around it for protection. Palisades were also put around the Whitfield House and the Gray Cottage and the first house, so on what was known as the Ephrata Tract. And that site sheltered refugees as well. So during that time, as many as 60 refugees were sheltered in the Rose. So the Moravians sold the Rose Inn in 1771, and unfortunately in 1758 it was torn down. So you might often hear that Nazareth is referred to as the Barony of the Rose. This refers to an older English legal custom regarding land ownership and the status of Pennsylvania as a proprietary colony. When William Penn's daughter, Letitia Aubrey, took possession of the 5,000-acre Nazareth tract in 1731, it was established as a manor. In return, the holder of the manor supplied the lord with labor, produce, or payment of cash. In this case, Aubrey agreed to pay one red rose on June 24th of each year to the proprietor of the colony, and that rose legend kind of stuck. So, and I hope you recognize this building. This is known as the Manor House. It was built in 1755 as a residence for Count Zinzendorf, who was the main leader and benefactor of the Moravian Church during those early years. At the time it was built, it was the largest single-family residence built in all of America, colonial America. Zinzendorf never moved in, and so he never lived there. But you know, as I mentioned, it was quite a sight, right? You can imagine the scale of this building. People came from all over just to see it. So because Zinzendorf never moved in, it was turned into the School for Moravian Boys in 1759, and then it opened to all boys in the 1780s, and that's when they started calling it Nazareth Hall. When the Civil War was being fought, the school changed from Moravian pacifism to the discipline involved in military training, and the school became known as Nazareth Hall Military Academy. Numerous students served during the Civil War, with 234 serving for the Union and 28 serving the Confederacy. So this is actually quite remarkable that you had a school where the students fought on both sides. And it was because of the reputation of the school. People came from all over to attend. On August 28, 1786, a small park was laid out to the west of the Hall buildings. This area is known as the Pleasure Gardens, which you should also be familiar with. This is a series of landscape terraces planted with specimens brought from around the world by Moravian missionaries, and a spring-fed brook at the bottom. They added bridges, they added a pavilion, and rare varieties of trees and shrubs grew there. Sketches of the garden showed that there was a pond and a structure for reflection. So downtown Nazareth as we know it today, with its center square, it's a little hard to see. Does this have a pointer? Do we know? Do I want to try? There it is. Okay, so here's their circle right there. And just to orient you, here is what they called the Ephrata Tract. So there's the Whitfield House, the first house, and the Gray Cottage. Look, it's surrounded by orchards and farms. Isn't that lovely to think about? And then this is what they called the Plantation, which was also farms with additional farms below that. Of course, this is all developed now. But this is how Nazareth was laid out, with the circle in the middle, Center Street going east and west, and Main Street going north and south. And it was surveyor George Golkowski who put his compass down in the middle and decided to lay out that grid. And so here the Moravians could now build private homes and businesses on church. The church still owned the land. So as the circle developed, the building on the left is the first community store. It was built in 1772. The store was operated by the village committee of the Moravian Church. It was originally stone. It's now stuccoed, and it's the law offices on the circle there. The shorter building to the right, to the side of the store, was the carriage factory. Just south of the present-day post office is the second store for Nazareth. It was designed in 1796 by William Henry II, son of famed patriot William Henry of Lancaster. William Henry II was trained as a joiner as well as a gunsmith, and he designed both the Shannock Moravian Church and also Bethlehem's first bridge in 1794. So the reputation of Nazareth, this is the Nazareth Inn, the reputation of the Nazareth Inn grew quickly after opening in 1771. Early on, 2 stagecoaches left the inn daily, one bound for Easton, the other for Bethlehem. By 1912, the inn had 4 stories with a bar, office, pool room, lobby, a dining room located on the second floor. And in 1968, the building was sold to Warren Deck, who established the Nazareth Hardware and Furniture Store. Is anybody here a long-time resident of Nazareth? Do you remember walking through the furniture store? How wonderful that was? It was so cool. All right. So, economic pressures and a changing country brought about the end to the Moravian-only restricted community in 1856. The borough of Nazareth officially became a municipality in 1858. As you can imagine, this is a time of great change for Nazareth when an influx of youth came in to work in the businesses that were now opening. And one of the very first businesses to open was the C.F. Martin and Company. In August of 1857, Christian Frederick Jr. bought the entire block on Main Street from North Street to High Street, and soon built their residence and what we call the North Street factory. Christian Frederick Martin Sr. emigrated from Markneukirchen, Germany to the United States in 1833, and he originally set up his shop in New York City. Life in New York City at that time was kind of a harsh environment. His wife was not real happy there, and she had a friend who lived just outside of Nazareth who she visited. The story goes that she fell in love with the rolling hills of Nazareth, which reminded her of her home in Markneukirchen, Germany. Imagine Nazareth was also still German-speaking at the time. That would have made her feel at home. And so she convinced CF to move his factory, his shop, to Nazareth. Originally, they set up outside of town, and as I mentioned before, as soon as the town opened, they moved in. And then, of course, you all remember what happened in the 1960s with the folk boom and the demand for guitars. Martin outgrew their North Street factory and built the new factory, which is in Upper Nazareth now, just on Bile Avenue. Of course, they still make the finest guitars in the world. So Nazareth was a convenient stopping point as roads were established for travel between Philadelphia and points north and to New York City and points west. By 1914, Nazareth had 25 hotels, can you imagine? And operated 4 trolleys, stopping in Nazareth to support travel and tourism. It really was situated at the crossroads of major transportation routes. Nazareth was an active multicultural center for trade and industry. Industries included textiles, of course, the cement company, and agriculture. The textile industry in Nazareth flourished with 2 successful companies, the Nazareth Waste Company and the Kramer Hosiery Company. By the turn of the 19th century, the Waste Company employed 450 workers who produced 2,500 dozen garments per day in 400 different styles. And they went out across the world with the tag Nazareth, so it's always a little point of pride there. And of course, the biggest change to Nazareth perhaps came with the discovery of cement in the late 19th century and the production of high-quality Portland cement. The cement boom brought an influx of immigrants from Austria, Hungary, Italy, and Poland, doubling the borough's population and adding a rich variety of ethnic diversity. The Nazareth Cement Company built the old mill in 1898 and shipped cement early the next year as far west as Milwaukee and throughout the South. As the town grew, new churches were built to serve the growing and diverse population, including Lutheran, United Church of Christ, and a Catholic church. And of course, we can't talk about the history of Nazareth without talking about the racetrack. So this is the original half-mile dirt racetrack, was for stock car racing. Once the Nazareth Fairgrounds, this track was built in 1955. Many Sunday nights, residents heard the rev of the dirt car engines and watched the dust cloud rise over the track as the cars raced. And if you have been here since that time, you'll remember that well. In 1969, the year that Mario Andretti won the Indy 500, he also won the race at this local track. In 1987, Roger Penske bought the Nazareth National Speedway and paved the track. He renamed it the Pennsylvania International Raceway. The first event was held there in September of that year, with Michael Andretti winning the kart race. So, of course, Mario Andretti brought fame to Nazareth when he won the Indianapolis 500 on May 30th, 1969. To honor this win, Nazareth renamed Market Street, where the Andrettis resided, to Victory Lane. Mario still has the honor of being the only driver to have won the prestigious trifecta. So that was the 1967 Daytona 500, the 1969 Indianapolis 500, and the 1978 Formula One World Championship. Now, I will say that Nazareth is also fortunate to have a museum and a historic site maintained by the Moravian Historical Society. We're one of the oldest historical societies in Pennsylvania, the third oldest, founded in 1857 by a group of citizens who were concerned about preserving the culture of the Moravians. This year, we're 169 years old. It's a pretty good record. We are proud that we continue to preserve our renowned collection, advance scholarly research, and create compelling exhibitions and programs for the community. Our museum is home to some of America's rarest treasures, illustrating the Moravians' contribution to American history. Many of the items on exhibit are one of a kind or extremely rare, including the 1776 Tannenberg organ on the right. Of course, celebrating its 250th birthday this year, right along with the country. That organ was played for George Washington when George Washington visited Bethlehem. We also house the first piano and the first violin known to be made in America, and of course personal accounts and objects related to the American Revolution. So we're committed to providing access to all of these amazing resources. I invite you to come out and learn more about all of this by taking a guided museum tour or a historic Nazareth walking tour, or joining us for one of our programs. You can see some of them featured here on this slide. Our walking tours go out every second Saturday of the month, and our museum is open 7 days a week for guided museum tours between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So thanks so much for your interest in our beautiful old town. Do I have time for a couple of questions? Yeah? Any questions? Yes. Yeah. During the French and Indian War, when there were it was not a safe place, right, during that time. There were a lot of skirmishes, and so people fled from points north, mostly. You're welcome. Thanks for your question. Any others? Well, I hope to see you all at the Whitfield House at some point, or stop by and see the Gray Cottage and the amazing preservation project we have going on. Thank you again.
Thank you, Susan. At this time, I'd like to ask Michael to come up and talk about the foundation a little bit.
Hello, everyone. How's everybody today? So I asked to be here today to report back on a few of the events that we held. Last town hall, we were really gearing up for them. For being the first one was our golf classic. and I was want to report basically how that all went. We had a beautiful day, and we had 107 golfers, so we hit like a new record with the amount of participation. The list that you see up there, which I understand can be difficult to read, but those were all of our philanthropic sponsors for the event. So we had over 53 sponsorships that came in for the event, who then brought their golfers with them. We raised over $55,000 in sponsorship dollars this year, which was another record-breaking year. And the proceeds from that are all going to support the Galley House renovation project that we've talked about once we get that up and running. So it was a great day. We had a lot of great participation, especially from residents. We had residents at Heritage Village who put together some amazing raffle packages that we had that day, including prior to the event. So we had sales over at Heritage Village and then for raffle tickets, and then we did them here right up to the day. And thankfully, we had 4 individual residents who won baskets who did not come to the golf tournament themselves and be a part of it. So, we had the ability to have those who were participating here and really trying to give back, who also won a raffle basket on the day. So it was a great day. A lot of good things came out of it, and we look forward to it next year. As you can potentially see, we already set the date for next year, June 23rd, 2027. So at Green Pond Country Club. So mark your calendars so that you can all come out next year. We then, 1 week later, had the Rockathon right here in this room. We did move it inside instead of having it out in the front just due to weather. Temperatures rose, and it really did work out well inside the room. So collectively, we decided to have it in here. We had all the rocking chairs in the center of the room. We had all the raffle baskets over here at the front. We had entertainers come in the morning and the afternoon. The biggest entertainment for all those who were rocking was a fun game with community fun and engagement with a beach ball game where everybody was sitting around and hitting the beach ball around and getting hit in the head by the beach ball because they weren't paying attention. But one of the pieces of our planning, we're thinking, oh, well, that'll be fun, but maybe the group will lose the enthusiasm of doing it, but not really thinking. Everybody changed chairs every half hour, so that excitement just kept going, and it was only those who were there all day that were looking maybe for something else to do. But we had plenty to do. We already started thinking about new things for next year, and again, we had great participation with the raffle baskets. We had a lot of staff members and departments who put together baskets, and we had individuals come in from Memory Cafe. So it really was a community event. The group that really drove this was the resident group, right? So John Turcha was our main individual from here who was helping to drive things in the apartment side of it. We had Linda McMeekin and Sherry King who are helping to really drive things over at Heritage Village, and between that, a little bit of competition was developed, and I think that really helped elevate the excitement behind Rockathon, which is something that we need to do each and every year, is to kind of elevate that excitement for that activity and event, because it really does go to such a good cause, which is our Wellness Trust Fund. And that Wellness Trust is what is helping to support all of our dementia care programming and other things related to, whether it be Memory Lane, Memory Cafe, programs that we're offering between Eventful Living and Life programs, and anything new that's coming up, especially the music therapy program that we run. And we have allocated dollars towards that. Somebody from the outside is coming in to run that program, and it is so beneficial to anyone who's here who's taking part in that, because music is one of the last things to ever leave anyone's mind. right? That connection always stays true. So the donations that we received was just over $28,000 this year. Of that $28,000, 324 of it was really only cost. That full 28,000 we'll be able to put back into our dementia care programming. So I'm really excited about that. I reported that out to our leadership team, asking them to bring me their information so that we can start adding those dollars into their operating budget and really use them throughout the next course of the next year until we get to the next Rockathon, where we'll look to surpass that number, and with everyone's help. We did set the date for next year. It's going to be May 5th. So we're going to go earlier this year for Rockathon, because that is the National Alzheimer's Support Month. And so that's why we picked that. So then we can also break up the Rockathon and the golf tournament, because we do like having the golf tournament later in June for weather purposes. When we were having the golf tournament in early May, if those who were involved remember, it would be a day like today. So the rain was coming down, and the way the golf courses work, it's rain or shine unless they call it off. So this way we'll have a little bit of break in between. Wildflower honey, our Morningstar Living wildflower honey, I wanted to report on that because they do support the foundation at the end of the year. This spring, we got 596 pounds of honey from the 10 hives that we have at our apiary. There we go. So 596 pounds of honey, which is record-breaking in itself. We had our biggest harvest for the year was 570 pounds, and that was from a spring and a fall harvest. And we surpassed that with the spring. That, I always like to put to light, we have 10 hives. Of those 10 hives, 2 of them were our cut comb honey hives, so we didn't pull anything off of 2. So now we have 596 pounds off of 8. But of those 8, 2 of those hives really didn't produce anything. So that's almost 600 pounds of honey from 6 hives. So they were working hard, and it really comes down to the B group and advisory group that we have here, which is all run by residents who really helped drive this process and get us to where we were. We went on sale and sold honey over at Heritage Village and over here at Moravian Hall Square at the front desk. We have since stopped selling at the front desk and at Heritage Village, and now honey is available for sale in the Good Spirit General Store. So there's 12-ounce honey bears over in that store to be able to purchase at any point in time that you want to go down. Speaking of the general store, does everyone realize that the general store is completely run by volunteers, and at the end of the year, they will donate a percentage to the foundation to help support different areas of our funding. It could be the Good Samaritan Fund, it could be the Wellness Trust, it could be for employee appreciation or education purposes. So they will we work together to come up with that percentage. And this year, I'm happy to say that they donated $3,745. So those proceeds were about 10% of their sales that was donated to the foundation and will be put towards the Wellness Trust. And so again, going to support dementia care programming in our facility, which is a big need for us here. It's something that is always going to be needed increasingly. And so the more funds that we can have for that, as well as, our main focus has always been the Good Samaritan Fund, and that will always be our top and main piece. But we have to look to support some of the other funds too for different programs that we have. So I did invite Kristen Cleary. Kristen sitting over here to my left. So Kristen and Cindy Hunt are the 2 main individuals who are running the store. Again, voluntarily running those store. Carol Fries is our main resident volunteer in there. You see her all the time. But without these individuals and without the volunteers who are coming in, the general store would not exist. So I really wanted to bring this to light today. We're putting up a new sign in the window because there is one there now. So there will be a new sign in the window proudly presenting that this is run strictly by volunteers and proceeds are going to the foundation, just to kind of bring that excitement back into the facility, for you to be able to tell that to anybody who's not here today. To tell family members, because the proceeds that are coming out of there really do go back into the community in all ways. You know, they are paying for the products that they're selling, but then at the end of the day, everything's going back into the community. So it is very much appreciated that they are willing to do this and wanting to do this. Just like the B Group is willing and wants to put back into the community not only what they need to run the program, but also to give back so that it can go into something else. Coming up, October 22nd is Harvest of Friends. This year's basically we're keeping everything within the 250th transitional theme. So this year it's a legacy of stewardship. It's honoring the past and investing in the future. Two main components of our community, right? It's always looking back at where we came from and where we want to go to, right? We always want to be a leader in the community, be a part of the community, and we felt that this was a great way to do it and honor the 250th throughout the year, and a great way for us to capitalize on the end of the year for one of our biggest programs. So this is just a save the date. It is here. We will have cocktail hour down in this room at 5:30. Then we will move upstairs to the Rose Inn for dinner after that. There's going to be a lot of fun activities that we'll be doing throughout the night, between just general conversation, entertainment, and good food, and good stewardship with one another on that evening. So we're looking forward to it. There'll be more information to come and invitations that'll be coming out soon, okay? And just to bring to like the last thing to attention, we have the employee appreciation appeal that's been going around and been broadcast or published in the weekly wrap. So the employee appreciation is the time that everyone is looking to give back to the employees that work with Morningstar Living. Those monies are then donated to and split amongst the staff members each year through the council members. So Dan Lynch and Sally Brower are the two individuals who really spearhead that and really then bring that into us once it's all collected. And we present that as a holiday gift to all staff members. So that was put into the weekly wrap a few weeks ago. I wanted to just bring it to everybody's attention again today because our deadline for that is November 15th, that those who are contributing to that want to get that in so that we can get that all situated before the end of the year. So that is all the updates that I have for you today. Okay, thank you everybody.
Thank you, Michael. As Kara makes her way up here, anybody that wants to stand up for a minute, raise your hands, take a deep breath, do it. Yeah. Just take a minute to move a little. Kara's going to talk a little bit about the resident satisfaction survey.
Hello, everybody. As hopefully all of you know, we did do a resident satisfaction survey for both Heritage Village and the Moravian Hall Square campus, and we just wanted to share the results of the survey with you. And you don't have to memorize these numbers. It will be coming out in the packet along with the full results for the survey, so if you want to know the full breakdown of all the scores, it will be there. Our survey response was pretty fair. We had 74 responses from Heritage Village, 67 from this campus. And we convert your scores into a 1 to 5 scale, with 5 being excellent. So our average survey response at Heritage Village was a 4.46, and on the MHS campus it was a 4.54 with a combined average of 4.5. So what does this tell us? Overall, people are happy, satisfaction is strong across both campuses. Wellness, transportation, safety, and dining anchor the scores, and then areas of opportunity. Our lowest scoring area was a 3.9 out of 5, so that's pretty good. And then we'll talk about that in a little bit. So what's working well? Top rated areas, resident-led clubs, safety and security on both sides, wellness office services, Good Spirit Cafe, transportation. It was pretty uniform in as far as the scores. So really what everybody wants to know is, what are our opportunities? This is what we really look for in our surveys. What are our opportunities to continue to grow and improve? So our biggest opportunity on both campuses was pretty consistent with the Peachtree Pub. Gareth mentioned earlier they're doing some things to enhance services. They've added the 2 days a week. They've also added real silverware. So that was the biggest comment. So a couple other things: staff responsiveness, entertainment options, and then community grounds. Communication is always something we hear from people with some discrepancies noted. We've implemented some new processes across the board, and actually that was done right around the time the survey was done. So we'll keep an eye on how that is going, and please provide feedback if you have any questions or concerns. So really where we're going to be focusing over the next few months is looking at the Peachtree Pub experience, menu variety, food temperature, we mentioned silverware, and then some maintenance and grounds things, looking at response times, landscaping priorities, and then follow through on requests. Matt is unfortunately not here, but he will give you an update on some of those things coming up, but they had been working to get some of the grounds options resolved and do some of those plans. So that is the highlights of the survey. As I mentioned in the packets that'll be going out, it'll have the survey breakdown for all the categories if you want to review them. Again, all of them were very good. We only had the one area that scored below a 4. Most of them were in the mid to upper 4s. All right, thank you. Oh, just one quick thing. If anybody did do the survey and had a specific comment, you either have or will be getting some follow-up from Kelly or her team or whoever was appropriate. And I want to throw this out. If you do a survey and you give us comments and you remain anonymous, you don't put your name on, we don't know who to follow up with. So, and a lot of times the comments are, you know, this has been broken for 2 weeks and I haven't gotten a response. If you put your name on, we'll make sure you follow up. We have a large group that reads through all of the comments, everything. So sometimes people want to remain anonymous, and that's fine, but just know we can't follow up on any of the concerns if you remain anonymous, because we don't know who to follow up with to get the details we need. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Kara. And as she mentioned, we'll have a little packet up here at the end of the program.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Kara. As you know, I like to give you an update from an operations standpoint to let you know where we are from January 1 to the point in time of year. The last update I provided was through May, I believe it was. So this is the January to July update. And of course, you know, I sound like a broken record. I'm always talking about census, but census is the driver of our financial business model at Morningstar Living. So right now we're experiencing very high census. Our census at residential living on the Moravian Hall Square campus is 95%. Our census at Heritage Village is 98%. And in personal care, this is where we have the greatest opportunity for improvement. And this you'll see in a transition slide that I'm going to share next. That anytime there is movement in the continuum of care, it creates vacancy. And so we have our greatest amount of vacancy right now in our personal care area. So we're currently at the end of July, we're at 87%. That's changed a little bit since July. And nursing care at 93%. As I mentioned about resident transitions, you can see we had 5 resident transitions. Those are transitions or turnovers of accommodations that occurred in all of residential living, including Moravian Hall Square Residential Living and Heritage Village, and we had 18 in personal care and 19 in nursing care. So lots of activity in and out and through the continuum, which creates a lot of vacancy. And remember, as accommodations are being vacated, there's a period of time that residents have to move things out too. So there's kind of a snowball effect of vacancy until residents get things moved out and moved into a new accommodation. The challenge that presents for us, and it will be an issue in 2027, is that we have really a shortage of the type of accommodations that people want. When we have high census in residential living, it really means that we don't have a lot of places for people to occupy. And of the places that we have a combination of studios at Moravian Hall Square and 1-bedroom apartments. And unfortunately, what single and co-occupants want are 2-bedroom apartments. So we really have a shortage of 2-bedroom apartments, and I'm going to talk about that in the question and answer session. But it will mean fewer entrance fees at Moravian Hall Square in 2027. And it will also mean lower entrance fees because studios and 1-bedrooms generate less financial entrance fee than a 2-bedroom. Year to date, here's where we stand with resident revenue. We actually budgeted a little over 18 million. We came in at less than 18 million, just close to 18 million, so a deficit of 250,000. But on the expense side, and there's where we have the opportunity all the time for the department managers to manage expenses to kind of align with any shortfall in revenue. We were able to save about $732,000 of expenses that were originally budgeted to hold back on making purchases because of the lower revenue. Consequently, what that presents as a big picture is our NOM is at 9.8%, which is quite excellent. So a community like ours that's experiencing a net operating margin of anywhere from 7 to 10% is doing very, very well. That's largely driven by a concerted effort to reduce use of agency contract workers. And that comes about by us being better at recruiting and onboarding team members, and also using our scheduler to better plan the schedules for our healthcare center. So we had budget agency use of about 450,000. We actually used 332,000. So even though you're seeing a shortfall of 114,000 mathematically, operationally, that is a good news picture because we underspent by about 25.6%. Employee retention has changed drastically. In 2024, we were hovering around 40% turnover. We've been successful at reducing that to hovering around the 20% right now. So that's also contributing to the less use of agency workers. And I want to applaud the health and wellness team who really stepped up as it relates to our 5-star rating. You know, historically, our community has always been rated a 5-star community for its health care. And it's rated based on an exhaustive inspection, quality measures, and staffing. And just 2 years ago, our quality rating went down, which we were all very disappointed by. And I think you'll remember that we talked about it, and it took a major effort to get this back to a 5-star rating. So I'd like to give a round of applause to our health and wellness team. Because really, things like a single harm level citation, staffing fluctuations, spikes in hospitalizations or infections, and survey inconsistencies across cycles can literally impact our 5-star rating for several years. And it could take years for us to get it back. So we had a team of 5 individuals who really went at this for the last year to bring our quality measures up. We had an excellent, flawless healthcare survey when we had the unannounced survey that took place this year. And that is not an easy thing to achieve, but what's even harder is maintaining the 5-star rating. I just want to remind you that quarterly calendars are now on the app. I think you probably know that Danielle announced that as of July 1, there were going to be a number of changes. And she did create a separate app for a piece of the app for quarterly calendars. So in addition to the hard copy printed calendars, you can find the quarterly calendar on the My Morningstar app. Some of you may have heard that we are testing, or trying, I should say, to test a fall detection device for medical alerts. And we are working with a company called Guardian Medical to try to see if this is a viable wrist-worn fall detection device that we can offer to residents and also to clients of Senior Solutions in the Lehigh Valley that we serve. So Kelly is actually spearheading the whole testing process. I think we issued one to Taylor Ernst, who went to Williamsport, is that right? And his device went off and the emergency responders showed up here at Moravian Hall Square. So the test was not that successful, to say the least, but we are working with the company. There were certain things that needed to be set up properly. There are a number of you in this room that were invited to participate. We kind of paused it. We put it on hold. We made Kelly be the test agent now, so she's working with the device until we can get the rest of the residents in the test ready to go with the device. As it relates to Galilee House, there have been a lot of changes since May, since we talked about the improvements to Galilee House. At one time we were talking, we still are talking about 6 phases of construction there, but now we're talking about 5 new accommodations versus 4. We originally said that we were going to build 4 additional accommodations, and we decided that with our architect's input and our engineer, that we can actually add an addition to Galilee House and incorporate 2 additional accommodations there and still improve and expand the Wonder Garden and build a very beautiful and large kitchen environment with dining for the residents there. So we're really excited about this. It's going to be a very tough renovation. Bethany was a no-brainer. I mean, the way Karen Geiger and Matt Matejcek orchestrated the resident movement for that to occur seamlessly was beautiful. But I was just meeting with Karen Geiger this morning, and we're talking about some of the concerns that we are going to have with, you know, the resident population in Galilee and how we're going to have to transition those residents to make it smooth and obviously not too disruptive for the residents. Heritage Village had its Board of Supervisors meeting on August 6th, and I'm happy to report that we got our conditional final approval for the small phase of construction. We still have an NPDES permit to get in order for us to begin, so we are anticipating that we'll start construction in September, making the move-ins for these 5 units occur probably in the summer of 2027. And then we also, since we last met, we acquired another property on Green Street. We did that fairly quickly. I think I looked at it on a Friday. We closed on it 2 Mondays later. So it was a great thing. As you know, we try to acquire properties on Green Street to add them to our campus. We've been very successful at renovating them and actually renting them to employees, long-term employees who work here. So it works out to be a really nice thing. And of course, one of those homes is our actual guest house. And I want to mention that many of you participated in the Nazareth Lunch Program that took place in July from the 13th to the 17th. We did that in partnership with the Nazareth Rotary, and we did a very good job. This program has been going on for years for kids who are out of school and don't have lunches. And so family members and children come every day of the week to pick up lunches for as many kids in the family or family members that they need. So it was another great year to do that, and thank you for your help. And then I just want to mention that we're really into eventful living now for over 10 years. It's hard to believe, but I know when I came here, there were 4 programs, all with different brands. One was Senior Pathways, another was Lunch and Learn, which was a financial program that Molly Santee kind of spearheaded. We had Arts and Artists, and then we had a wellness program. And it was the desire of this organization to put all of those brands under one brand. And that's how Eventful Living came about. And it's wonderful to see that after 10 years, it's still going strong. Likewise, Life, which started 7 years ago. Actually, many of you were involved in the planning. It was always intended to be a resident-driven program in partnership with an education entity. And when we started it, we did an RFP. We sent out about 8 RFPs to area community colleges, universities, etc. And we decided to work with East Stroudsburg University. And we did that even all the way through COVID, believe it or not. We actually, when we put the Cooper Center under construction, we did what we call Life on the Road. And we programmed all of the events and activities and programming for the Life program to be things where residents could get on a bus and go visit things and learn about, because we couldn't use the Cooper Center. So again, 7 years and counting, and we're still going strong. And then I want to mention, just to give you a heads up, that last year we created a program called Transitioning from Personal Care to Nursing Care. We did that because many family members of residents were very concerned about why their loved one had to transition. If they were living in Bethany House, Morningstar Hall, or even Galilee House and needed to move to nursing care, they didn't understand what legal requirements were held to, state regulatory-wise, in terms of being able to provide care and services in personal care. So we put together a program, and we had a number of our health and wellness leadership members deliver that. It was very successful, and we got a lot of requests to do it again. So we will be doing that again on October 20th. And that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Next, questions and answers. The questions and answers, as most of you know, the ones that I'm going to answer verbally or somebody else are questions that pertain to both campuses. So if it's a question that is something related only to Heritage Village, I have the questions written out and the answers there, so you can pick up your respective packet, whether you live in Heritage Village or Moravian Hall Square. So the first question that pertains to both campuses is, since Heritage Village residents are being offered a meal plan, is there a dress code for the Rose Inn restaurant? And if so, how is this enforced? The dress code for the Rose Inn restaurant is casual to formal. Coats and ties are not required, and we really do not have anybody policing it, but we ask that you use your best judgment. Secondly, since residents are asked to sign up on the Morningstar Living app for bus trips, why aren't the bus drivers given access to this tool? Wouldn't the access allow for a list of names and cancellations? The bus drivers are not responsible for sign-up lists of attendees for the events. Community Life keeps all of the lists with the attendees and cancellations. So the bus drivers would not need access to the app, and typically Community Life gives them a list of who's coming on that particular trip. Okay, all right, well, I'll look into that then. The third question, we have access to a podiatrist for foot care. Wonderful. Is it possible to have someone come in to cut or file fingernails? We are budgeting for our existing salon to expand and possibly provide additional options such as fingernail services. Okay, Sue.
Okay, I'm going to answer the last couple questions that pertain to both campuses, but I do want to mention that we're very happy with the submissions that you are providing in terms of questions. These are really great questions. And when I think about other town hall meetings, when we used to kind of have an open forum at the end where residents would stand up and ask questions, we never got to be able to answer the extent of questions that we're able to answer now because of you submitting them. So from our perspective, we're always open to re-looking at things and seeing if there's a better way to do what we're doing. But I will tell you, I'm sure Kelly would agree, that we have never received this many questions before. We could never handle them in an open forum because there might be a resident who had 2 or 3 questions, and then other residents would get very frustrated and leave the meetings because they really felt like somebody was asking all the questions and they didn't get their question answered or have an opportunity. So I just wanted to mention that. This question pertains to month-to-month leases that are being offered for memory care in Moravian Hall Square, but what happens to a Moravian Hall Square resident or a Heritage Village resident who might need one of those? So this is talking about non-residents coming from the outside directly into, let's say, Galilee House for admission. And I just want to refresh your memory that back in 2024, I did a presentation at Town Hall called Is There Room at the Inn, AKA, also known as Will There Be Accommodation for Me When I Need It in Healthcare? I don't know how many of you remember that, but it went through all of the financials associated with residency and nursing care and what happens when we don't have our own residents using those accommodations and if we would leave them vacant. And I think the number that I calculated with help from the business office was we would be losing on average $8 million a year if we didn't take outside admissions into our healthcare accommodations. Because in that same program, I calculated how many independent living residents we would need in our community combined, Heritage Village and Moravian Hall Square, if we only ever wanted to admit our own residents. And the number was 558 residences, not residents. So we are nowhere close to having 558 residences in residential living. And I went through the whole equation about how when we built Morningstar Hall, we added to Laurel, to the nursing home, we added Galilee House, that we actually oversized our healthcare accommodations to match what we have in residential living population. So we have to take direct admissions. Right now, I can tell you we have 5 accommodations that are not occupied in Galilee House because things happen sometimes all at the same time. And we have 2 transitions in process where 2 of the 5 will be occupied, but that will be a course of probably 30 days. So we know there's 2 residents going to Galilee House, but they're occupying an accommodation somewhere else, and we're holding one. So that generates a loss for us. So that's why it's so important to understand what the key to getting an accommodation when you need it is really all about. And that has to do really with our wellness office, the planning and coordination. If you are living with someone and you know that they are struggling and you don't really see the move or a permanent move or transition in the near future, it's still a good idea to register that concern about your loved one with our wellness office, because Kelly and her team can then prepare for that and keep the rest of the organization on the healthcare side up to date as to what's going on with the resident that you live with. So that is really the key. Communication and planning, that will ensure that you will have access and an accommodation when you need one. I think you might also remember that in May I reported that for the first time during the period of January 1 through the end of April, we had only 4 non-resident admissions into our health and wellness center. That was a huge change because just a year prior to that, in that same period, 75% of our nursing care accommodations were non-residents using our healthcare accommodations for short-term rehab. So that has already started to change, where we're seeing our resident population using our accommodations more, and we are making adjustments. Our nursing care team, admissions person, is not taking as many direct admits from the outside, from hospitals of residents who don't live here, because we're expecting that our resident population is going to need our accommodations from time to time. But the real key, the answer, is communication and planning. The next question was, how does MSL decide to approach individuals, as indicated in the weekly wrap, about downsizing to an alternative accommodation? So there were a couple pieces to this, so I'm going to address them individually. First of all, it is very common in a life plan community, and you saw in my report that I mentioned that we are kind of in a crisis right now in residential living at Moravian Hall Square, in that we have very few accommodations available, and those that are available are 1-bedroom and studios. So Lori, because of the great salesperson that she is, she will talk to people from time to time, individuals who may have come into her office and said, you know, what would it look like if I downsize from my 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom? What would that mean to my monthly fee? Or even if a family member of a resident came to see Lori and said, you know, I'm kind of concerned about my mother's assets. Should we be looking at downsizing her? So Lori does talk to people on an individual case-by-case basis, but we also want to promote it, as we do, to be fair to all residents. We want all residents to know that if they do want to change their lifestyle for any reason, they want to downsize, that we can put them on an internal waiting list to do that. So it's strategic inventory management, first of all, from Lori's perspective, and then it's fairness to all residents, and that's why we publicize it. And then, of course, it's voluntary. So nobody's forcing you to move. Nobody's, you know, from time to time we offer incentives. I think we did last year. We offered that we would pay for the entire move for a resident to move. And that worked out well for the resident because the resident wanted to downsize anyway. So it was a win-win. Now, part of the question also inferred that shouldn't we be talking to people who perhaps aren't, paying their bills, okay, meaning their monthly fee. Fortunately for Lori, that's not her job. So it's the business office that literally, if there's somebody struggling, and I will tell you, if a resident is at risk of spending down all of their assets, I have never known a situation where the resident hasn't taken the lead and went to the business office and said, could you look at my finances? Could you make sure I'm going to be okay? And so basically, it would be the business office that would engage with residents in that matter. So that was the second part of that question. The third question for me was, given that this year's financials were so good, that they were presented as a rare occurrence, will that translate into our monthly fee not increasing? I love this question. I really do, because that's a hope, isn't it? Well, first of all, I want to talk about transparency around financials and monthly fees. It is not a rare occurrence, first of all, that we are financially sound. This organization had decades of being financially sound. What happened to us was COVID. Nursing care didn't want to come to a nursing home because do you remember all the bad rap that we were getting as a nursing home? That people were saying, everybody that goes to a nursing home is getting more sick or dying, and et cetera. And so all the nursing homes had this bad mark on them. Well, that significantly changed our financial picture. So from an investment standpoint, somebody who does ratings, which is called the Fitch ratings, our Fitch rating went very low. And that was because of poor census and capital expenses. Because remember, at the same time, we were in the midst of building Heritage Village. So we took on tremendous amount of debt. And not only at Heritage Village, but somehow magically during COVID, we renovated our entire nursing home. We were stopped for 30 days. I don't know if you remember when construction in Pennsylvania was halted for 30 days. And then thereafter, we went right back to construction. So on both campuses, doing major renovations and construction, that really brought, that took the rating of our investment status with investors way down. In fact, I can remember that we actually had residents for Heritage Village Phase 5 that dropped out because they read some of the notifications that were published about the investment ratings, and they were very concerned, and rightfully so. So I just want to say that it's not a rare occurrence that we're doing financially better. We will always be doing better when we do a couple things. And one is, the most important thing is maintaining high census in all levels of care. But it's important for you to know that monthly fees are really tied to the costs of providing services to residents. They are not tied to how well we do in 1 year or the next year. Second, consecutive years of capital improvements on both campuses, even like today I reported resident revenue is down, right? We're balancing that with holding and managing expenses. But quite frankly, we actually did many capital improvements even when our resident revenue wasn't even in a strong financial position. And most importantly, I think it's important for you to know that our success as a life plan community really hinges on long-term sustainability of this business model. And what that means is all of the residents that have preceded you for decades have paid monthly fees with increases every year so that you could have the quality of care and services that you have today. And we, quite frankly, are obligated to provide that to you for all the years of your life and for future residents that will move into our community. That's what your contract says. So we're obligated to do that. And so it's important to know that long-term sustainability is really the goal. It's, you want it because you want the organization that you live with to continue to provide the care and services and programming that you're getting. And the only way that we can do that is if we have the monthly fees covering some of those. But even in good financial situation, in any given year, your monthly fee increases do not really offset all of our operational expenses. And then lastly, I just want to say that a favorable financial picture today does not eliminate future costs associated with long-term debt that is funded for many years. So when you look at what we're doing, what we did in this campus, when we built in 2004 Morningstar Hall, Galilee House, Laurel, the new neighborhood and nursing care, when we built the Heritage Village campus, you're talking about years and years of long-term debt that has to be paid. And so that's what the monthly fees are going to. The last question that I have, and I'm answering on behalf of David Swartley, I'm sure I won't do this justice, but he received a question that said, in David Swartley's July letter, he stated that Unitas had been focused too heavily on income levels and is now looking at moderately priced rental communities without skilled care at the end of the continuum. How do rental communities fit with Morningstar Living's current mission? And should current residents at Morningstar Living have concerns about how this new direction would affect you? Those are excellent questions. And basically, I want to start by saying, at the end of 2023 in November, precisely when we actually legally formed Unitas Communities, it was always the case where Unitas Communities would have its own strategic marathon goals. And Morningstar Living and Moravian Manor Communities would continue to operate the business model that we have always operated. We are not talking about changing our business model, okay? We are committed to it. We have to be. We're contracted with you and future residents for all the years of your life, so we're going to be continuing with that business model. But Unitas's board of directors has asked us to really focus on serving the underserved market, the most massive market that is out there right now of retirees is really the mid-market. By 2033, 16 million Americans will be over the age of 75, and 50% of them will not have enough money for senior housing. So we started working on this marathon goal for Unitas with Unitas's board of directors, and we got actually into many, many conversations about what is the middle market? How do you define it? What's the income level of the middle market? What's the asset requirement? And we quickly realized that it was really more about developing a new business model in terms of not necessarily income and assets, but serving seniors that are looking for a rental model. So there are a number of individuals, some that have great wealth, some that have no wealth, that want a solution that doesn't include an entrance fee, that doesn't include the continuum of care because they don't want to pay for it, obviously. And so basically, we would still do some financial underwriting, but we'd be looking at building really a rental-based community where individuals move into an apartment, and we've looked at a number of different options in a number of different markets between here and Lancaster. And basically, it would give us the opportunity to serve more and more people who need senior living solutions and perhaps provide them with some care navigation in terms of helping them know where to go to get the services and care they need when and if they need it. So this market that we're talking about is not going to infringe on residents living at Moravian Hall Square or Heritage Village, or even at residents living at the Moravian Manor communities. Because remember, Moravian Manor has a flagship organization campus just like Moravian Hall Square. It's called the Founders Campus. And they also have an active adult 55 plus like community called Warwick Woodlands, very similar to Heritage Village. We are not talking about disrupting these models at all. It is simply a net new market opportunity to further Unitas Community's mission of serving more and more seniors. So that's the answer. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you, Sue. And I just want to remind you, we usually stay here afterwards, after the end of town hall, so if anybody has additional questions, you can come up and speak to any one of us. But I do not want to hold anybody back from the happy hour that's waiting outside. Thank you very much.